is important. Do not press the record button and then be staring at your computer going, why is the internet taking so long to load up? Why is the internet not connecting? And looking at the screen and going, I'm sure there's something going wrong here. And then realizing, oh yes, I pressed the record button, not the stream button. I am officially a moron. Hello everyone, how are we all doing? If I sound a little bit funny, and if tonight doesn't go on as long as it normally does, there are two reasons for this. One, as you all know, as I've said I think before, my sister and my mother are both asthmatic. My sister's asthma crashed. This crash led to my mum's asthma crashing, and me getting what sounds like a bit of a cold. Which, considering I'm not asthmatic, I would think it means that my sister had a cold. But my sister assures me no, it's not at all possible for her to have not had a cold. Her asthma's crashed. Did ask if the cold could cause the asthma to crash, and then I got looked at very badly. So, I have apparently, despite the fact that I've been around no one who's been ill, haven't gone out because I've been cooking or just sorting out everything else for the home for the last few days, have managed to pick up a cold from thin air. We will leave that to one side. So if I cough or anything at the time, I apologise. I will try and cover my mouth in time, but I will apologise. And I'll apologise now and say this won't be as long as it sometimes is. And I've got recording to do this evening because if it is what I think it is, in terms of cold-wise, it's gonna be next few days, including going around and doing all the family stuff I've got coming out, I am gonna be absolutely bushwhacked and not wanting to do any recording. Yes, thank you. I'm glad to hear that I'm your moron. It's not the fluffy research assistant's fault, no. Between her cooking and her constant insistence that whenever she gets anything wrong with her, it's just her asthma crashing, it's nothing else. I love my sister, but she refuses to admit that she can't do things. I'd honestly like her to admit she can't do the cooking. Preferably while also handing me a voucher for a takeaway. Yeah, I don't think I'll get that one. I can dream, but I don't think it's going to happen. Oh, how are you all doing today? Glad I'm not the only one with the iron brew ready. Iron brew is keeping me going. Basically, I was surviving and keeping going based on caffeine consumption, which probably is not good for me. Let's say hello to everyone. Hello History Vanguard, hello Mark Harkness, hello John Shea, hello Michael Cooch, hello Matcha Dostal, hello Calvin Gasberg, hello Knight6831, hello Ruhon, hello Seneca Nero, hello Stephen Richards, hi Captain Seafort, hello Ruhon, hello Amelia, hello Tash2 Rochelle, hello Byron, hello DG40, hello Colin Cameron, hello Just B, I Just Funk, Michael Cavello, hello. Tash2 Rochelle, hello. Wayne's World of Wayne, hello. Hello Seneca Nero. At the other mods, current procedure is just let most everything through. Yeah, that's normal, apart from, there was this person called Seneca that we tended to, block occasionally, just randomly. Hello Leslie Mitchell. Hello Guilty of Bias 881. I have no idea what that stands for, but cool. You can only find Iron Brew on either Amazon or Overpriced at one store. Oof, that's cruel. My Xmas day was lovely. Hello, Roll Smith. Will the fluffy research assistant respond to talks of guns of only 8-inch? The fluffy research assistants, both of them object. At the moment, they are playing nursemaid to mum. And when I say nursemaid, my mother is, as I said, my sister's asthma crashed, then my mum's asthma crashed, and then I developed a cold. In that order. I would say the dogs, the fluffy research assistants are currently keeping very close to my mum. Because, yeah, whenever she's unwell, they get a lot of biscuits. They have worked this one out. My mother goes from being the one who it's hardest to get a biscuit off if you're a fluffy research assistant when she's fine and healthy, to when she's unwell, she just keeps giving them out and then goes, how is this my box empty? It's never usually empty this quickly. And I'm sitting there going, well, Mum, it's because you gave them biscuits just because they give you attention every time you sneeze. I mean, one of them literally is trained now to the idea that when a human sneezes, you jump up in their lap and sniff their face and smile at them to check if they're okay, because they're so used to getting biscuits for it. Yep. A limited Dr. Clarke series, Wooden Ships and Iron Brew. Might do that sometime. Pretty well, thank you. Looks like your sister being bad at cooking is a topic approximately every third live. How often are I allowed to cook? No, she's getting better, but no, her cooking is not great. I don't know. She tries. Speaking of sister, she's just checking on me. I don't know. Do you love it? She goes, perhaps you're asthmatic too, and I go, no, because I get checked out every year to if I'm asthmatic. I have the full tests. I have never been found to be asthmatic once. No, you had a cold. Sorry, completely randomly off on my own family conversations. Excellent, Leslie. Glad to hear that. Hello, HMS Verdun. We need to stream on the aesthetics of British ships. Did I open the red jar? Carl goes back. I have been cooking Christmas turkey, and gammon for the last few days. I am saving that red jar for when I get into January and I'm allowed to cook something else. Then it'll be fun to try it out. I'm thinking from the contents of it and from reading its ingredients, I'm thinking it's probably something to do with pork. I should put with pork as my idea. But that's off topic. Right. So. How are we all doing today? If I just put in a quick note for people. Chat and then that feels better. What is a red jar? The red jar is a very nice sauce. I've decided is what it looks like. That I was sent by Carl as part of a package with a load of chocolates, of which there is only one pack of chocolates remaining because all the rest have been slowly eaten by my family, mostly. I have tried some of them. I have managed to have bits, individual pieces, but Ruth sent cherry chocolate to a house which is has had multiple addicts visiting it of cherry chocolate. And frankly, yes, this doesn't happen. Glad you're enjoying it, Rob. So, let's start off with 100 Years of Gun Cruisers. Now, this was always going to be a rather random thing to do, because I've spent the whole year doing cruisers. So, what was I planning on doing with this presentation and the long patrol which comes with it? Well, it's not a structured presentation as I normally do. It's kind of taking the last year and all the stuff we discussed on cruisers and trying to sort of answer any follow-up questions, really. When I was planning it, I sort of considered it like I would the last lecture of a year-long course, where, to an extent, I will give a presentation and I'll go over key points. That's what a long patrol will be. But most of it is sitting there going, right then, we've got exams coming up, we've got final coursework due. We've covered all these points, and to get through it all, we've had to go at a pace. We have. And so, what questions do you have? Where do you want to start? Now, I'm going to do a sort of mixture of that for this live. Of a mixture of talking about some things and putting some discussion there. But one of the things that I think we started off on, it's a good point to have my book up here when I'm talking about it, really, is that the difference between the cruiser as a ship, as a concept, and as a role. The cruising mission. The point is that hasn't gone away. That was something I was trying to, probably labouring a bit too much at certain points in certain videos. Trying to make the point of, it hadn't gone away. You still needed ships to do it. Ships still do it. Ships have to do it. The cruising role is in many ways the peacetime profile of a navy. Now, that's a problem. But it's also a problem for a navy, because it's also a benefit in that it provides them something to do in peacetime. But it's a problem because so much of what a cruiser provides in its peacetime role cannot be measured. How do you measure presence? How do you measure presence? Think about that. And by the way, if you want to really stump a really experienced class of very capable individuals, who spent X number of years in various forms of government service, and people who come from industry and all sorts of things, and they're sitting in your room and they're talking, and you sit there and go, how do you measure presence? One of the ideas that usually comes around from people is, well, who do they go to when they're in trouble? Who do they call on first? I go, yeah, that's a good one. How do you measure that? Do you rig a disaster and see who's going to call, who they call? Because that's not really practical, is it? That shows you the presence has paid off. It shows you matter. It shows you that you're of value, but you can't measure it. You can't go, well, we were this year's staged emergency. This power turned to called us number 2. And last year they called us number 4, so it's paid off. We've got greater presence than we had before. You can go, well, they chose these companies from us to do these major projects. Yes, that's another thing you can do. But can you point to the presence and go, it was the presence who did this, not the winning bids or the companies? Or in fact, yes, maybe the presence helped an ancillary role in easing the access and giving opportunity and showing commitment as a wider group to this area, but that doesn't really measure it, does it? And as Rapid Razorback has continued on from presence, you then get, how do you measure deterrence? And how do you measure conflict that was avoided? Because you don't always know a conflict's been avoided. Okay. There are the conflicts we can see that are avoided, where people have been massing forces and the ships turned up and gone, hello. Do you really want to do this? Do you really think this is a good idea? Have you seen how big my guns are? Let's then go this again. Do you really think this is a good idea? Well, those are almost easy to point to. Those, I've got entire books of Soviet gunboat diplomacy, all sorts of things up there above my head. I'm sure it's being used that. But what about the conflicts which don't happen because the guy sitting there, or woman, okay, it's been rarer in the past, women, but there have been a fair number of them as well, sitting there thinking, my generals are telling me that we should invade this country to sort out this problem. Last time I was there was a great big Royal Navy ship visiting, and they were all very friendly with them. Do I want to fight the Royal Navy? No. Generals, it might be a nice idea, it might be an easier solution, but let's be honest, it isn't a never-ending solution. We need to find another way. You cannot measure that. You cannot measure presence. You cannot measure deterrence. The only times you can measure those things is when it reaches extremists. So 90% of the time, you don't have any idea whether it's working or not. So how do you justify the cost? Very good books, Bandhome. Very good books. Dawn of Carrier Strike by David Hobbs and Sir Francis Drake by Julian Corbett. Corbett's one is a really interesting read. I like Hobbs' book as well. I do. Trust me, I've got it up there. But Corbett's is it's a rare find if you can find a good quality version of it. I'm alright, just sitting in my loft by myself, recovering socially from X events. I can understand that. I have just today picked up a 9-seater minibus for the next load of family events, because I have to be driving various people around them for next week. Have you any thoughts on the topic for 2024? I do have thoughts on topics for 2024. I have the topics planned out to roughly 2028, with ideas penciled in for 2029 and 2030. But, yeah, I'm not going to start talking about them, because I might change my mind. Snacks, I don't have any at the moment, Steve Richards. No, I won't, but I might order something. I'm hungry. H1, so now is my time to ask a question. Given the current size of frigates, constituting 80,000 tons of destroyers, are they all cruisers and president ships? Well, it's hard to argue that they don't fill that role in peacetime. They are all doing the cruising role now. All ships are cruisers now. To be fair, they always were. Karen, Doc, I know this stream is about the history of the gun cruiser, but with the way the Ukraine invasion is burning through missiles from multiple country stockpiles, could we see a resurgence in gun ships, with people seeing how quickly missiles are expended and how long they take to replace? Potentially. One of the interesting things, the discussion is, and this has come out on a few videos, I've been talking about rail guns recently. A number of people come through and go, well, it's not the power consumption that's the real problem. It's the wear in the barrel. It's the barrel wear and having to replace the barrel over a certain number of shots. And you sit there and go, well, actually, barrelware and those sort of things, they sort of had workable solutions for. They were just expensive. The power was the one they didn't have a solution for. Well, other than going for nuclear power. The thing was, those solutions were expensive under the climate of war is war. It's now all wars of choice. If we don't choose to go to war, we don't have to fight them. So, therefore, we don't care. We don't want to do that. Invest that money. Ukraine seems to have changed some metrics, but how many it changes and for how long, whether it's a permanent change or not, you won't be able to tell. Agreed, touched you for sure. Actually, indeed, on the thread you had in Tribals, Battles, and Airings, is the Tribal really a cruiser, even if they are called a destroyer? Tribals are destroyers. Yes, they have some capabilities of a cruiser. They certainly do. They are a cruiser-built destroyer in that regards, and their sort of the layout and how they look, how they act, and what their purpose is. But they are destroyers. Their mentality, their fire, their form, their actions, they're destroyers. They just can do the role of cruisers should they need to. And they do. They step up to that account on occasion. Asante is a great example. Asante's visit home is frankly absolutely perfect in terms of a presence mission. It's just that they are both sides involved. In fact, all three sides involved in dealing with its appearance back there, back home. Well, where it's named for is heavily invested in the idea of it being an effective mission and visit, and that's what they do. They make sure it is. And this is the reason why frigates disappear and cruisers become the big name. Because suddenly you have frigates as battleships. It's one of those interesting conundrums. There is almost the Royal Navy at one point when they're ordering these ironclads and the other vessels around the time of HMS Warrior. They're almost building a two-tier frigate navy. In fact, you almost expect someone to call them, well, these are our cruising frigates and these are our battle frigates. But no, they tend to go with the phrase armoured corvette for the ship which is doing the frigate role. But the British don't really like corvette because it's very French. So they start looking for a new word, and the French are also looking for a new word. But yes, it is HMS Warrior and HMS Black Prince, those very beautiful ships. And Warrior, of course, I did that recorded video on not that long ago. And they are wonderful ships, but they cause a problem, as I put here. Pardon me. Obliteration! Our frigates have become our battleships. Whatever we go are cruising in now. It's fun. Senator, presence as deterrents can nip a war in the bud so early there aren't even tensions. They can. Hi, Anuk. Actually, also, what would be the equivalent of presence for inland or non-naval countries? If you can find a way to define that, it gets easier. We see that's the trouble. How do you visit them? If you're a non-naval country, yet you're not inland, that tends to mean it's going to be ships visiting you still. So that's still presence. If you're inland, well, do I send a detachment of troops to exercise with you? But that's a major undertaking. You see, a ship turning up can host a dinner party and leave, and that's very little planning. If I'm sending some troops to have an exercise with you, I've got to get them there. First of all, I've got to arrange the exercise and get all the rules of engagement for the exercise sorted out. Get all the integration teams working together to make sure the exercise can go ahead, can work properly. Then get the troops there, get the logistics to support the troops there, take part in the exercise, withdraw the troops, have suitable events while there. There's a lot involved. Even a ship turning up, don't get me wrong. There'll be an embassy naval attaché who will first check and make sure you know the ship's coming. So warships don't turn up unannounced in your port. That's considered a bit rude. And it's not considered really sensible either. Then they will then go to the look for a suitable facility for the ship to come alongside. Okay, if you have a naval dockyard, well, that's very easy. Your navy will find us a space. They normally are quite happy to find one. If you don't have a large navy, you basically use your major commercial hub port as also your naval base. Then someone will have to wander along and have a conversation with the commercial hub and go, we'd like to rent this pier space, please. At which point someone will make a cue and cry, oh, you're going to interfere with the industry. And then they'll go, how much money? Okay, fine. And then you come in. And you have to arrange for the crew to go off. If they're going to go visit, you can host events aboard, and you can do an exercise as well. But usually the fact is, exercises at sea are sort of easier to organise because there's already international standards for how ships communicate with each other that they all have to follow. Theoretically. Occasionally, certain navies forget them, and I'm not talking about the navies you are going to be thinking of, because one of the navies which has had issues with it most recently had some collisions because of its issues with it. If you rang them with presence, you can detect huge presence with naval ships to deter conflicts. As soon as they're gone, the conflict starts. Or as Carl points out, and then the cases where the Victorian RN or Royal Kirov Battle Group showed up a year later at dinky 1,500-ton Corvette sloops of high emotions, just reminding the people that last year's ground fleet parade. Pretty much that's it. The big ships go around every now and again to remind you that the big ships exist. The little ships are there to remind you that the Navy exists. Anuk, you can measure lack of presence by being surprised when the Solomon Islands are allied with the Chinese instead of Australia or the US. You can. So we have to get to 2028, Doc. Well, I'm always positive. Besides, honestly, I'm not sure what I'll do with my Thursday evenings if this ever stops. I'm now so used to doing this on a Thursday and a Sunday. I have honestly no idea what I'd be doing on a Thursday or a Sunday if this wasn't on. I would just be going, oh, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to watch television now? Stephen Richards, you brought snacks, pizza and onion rings, and you didn't share any with me. None for me. Just terrible, terrible. Mm-hmm. Reference, tribals are the warships most like cruisers aspire to be. There is certainly an advantage to it. Let's hear it. Out of HMS Defence and HMS Bellerophon, which would have been the third Tiger-class cruiser if the HMS Lion name was unavailable? Lion class battleship was around. Bellerophon, probably, because defence they were already looking at for daring class destroyers. And I have the orders. Sorry. I love my family. I basically, they're saying they're full, they're full, they're full. Then I say I am hungry and I'm ordering something from McDonald's because I didn't have time to cook anything today and all I've had is some basic lunch. And the orders come through very, very quickly. I mean, it's Fanta and apple pie and McFlurries and apparently a burger of some kind. So it's not exactly massive, but you know. Ay, caramba. Can we ask if HMS frigates and cruiser size. Mind you, in the 1900, 1980, even 1914, 1980 Mediterranean cruisers from 1,500 to 13,000 tons did have their role impact. Yes, in those periods. The interesting thing is, based on this, a lot of this year, I might be saying something controversial here. The hours are battleships, but they were reactivated to work as cruisers. Cheaper than building a new ship with bus-sized missiles that face down the Kurils in ports, although you might need to build some now of Russians and Chinese. I would actually go further. I would say the Iowas are fast battleships, which could have been if they'd actually built. I think they're the Montanas. My brain's now dying. The even bigger ships they were looking at, battleships they were looking at, would have been basically almost the battle cruisers in equivalent to them, which are reacted to be battleships, not to be battleships, to be battle cruisers. Sorry, brain died. Pardon me. I have got to remember to actually eat when I'm living off iron brew, because believe it or not, if you have drink iron brew, fizzy drinks all day of any kind, iron brew is just examples of all of them, and don't eat, you tend to not be that good. It's just terrible to think about, really, but yes, you tend to not be that great. Mm-hmm. Oh, good lord. Sorry, they're out of apple pie. Distract me for a second, but they're out of apple pie. Hey, caramba. Hey, oof, they got the festive thing. Right. And that's all ordered. That is now all on its way and sorted out. should make them all happy. Should in theory make them all happy. He says. But no, I don't see the whole thing about the Iowas as controversial. It's, let's be honest, that's what they're produced for. That's what they are built for, and that's what they end up doing. There's nothing wrong with that. Seriously, people taunting me by having snacks is just cruelty. Didn't you hear me at the beginning? I'm sick. I'll fight it off. I always do. A recent video I watched put forth the idea that the Atlanta Dido class were comparable in role. I haven't watched your Dido video. What do you think? I don't think I've done a Dido video for starters, because I managed to avoid the Dido class. And I've managed to avoid the Atlantas as well. It's an amazing skill, but so far I have managed to avoid both Didos and Atlantas. Mainly because I would have to upset a lot of British people by saying, A, the Atlanta was actually probably better at the job than the Dido. And B, yes, they are incredibly comparable in role. In fact, of any cruiser types between the two navies, they are probably the two which most overlap in their role and functions. Inns Morrison, a royal progress might be a land adherent. A royal court shows up at your castle and you have to feed it. Yeah, that's going to bankrupt you. You're never going to wage war after you've had a royal progress visit. I think that's half the reason why Queen Elizabeth I spent her entire time going around the entire country. Keep the lords bankrupt feeding her, and then they will never rise up against her, because they'll never have the money to actually employ one to do so. For the Czech Republic, these missions often come as after release, like with firefighting reliefs, big rescue operations, having a detachment or onto chemical troops, and there's something similar. I can see that. It works. Now, I just thought you'd like to see this model, because it's one of the more beautiful ones I found in my various looking around studies, and that's of the Alma class, that model, which shows, what I find interesting is it shows, when we talk about the War of the Worlds and the ship described in it, you often when you're talking to a modern crowd, they hear the idea of the funnels next to each other, and they go, well, that's not normal. I mean, actually it is. There were lots of ships like that, not just paddle steamers going up and down the various rivers in America. There were lots of ships built with funnels side by side. It's a fun thing. Norway doesn't care for everything because everything is on icebreaker. Honestly, if you want to see a nation which does very good naval presence and deterrence for their size, look at Denmark. I mean, seriously. And Singapore. Denmark and Singapore both really, really exercise high-end naval presence deterrence missions. And they really do push them. And basically, if you look at how they're fitting out some of their ships, it's phraseology, etc., which would not be unusual around discussing cruisers. For that reason. Trooping the colour? Yeah, again. Stephen Richards, if it was an end-of-year test, would it be a Q&A or essay-based? Essay-based. Usually, as a rule, my end-of-year exam papers are 12 questions. Pick any two. You have 4 hours. Right. Each one will be worth 50% of the mark of the exam. As a rule, I tend to Okay, you will have to give 2 presentations. They will count for 30% of your grade. Usually you will have done 3 pieces of coursework, of which the 2 highest will count for 40% of your grade. And this is for a year-long course, please note, this is a year-long course. You will have the 1 exam, which counts for 30%. And you can lose, depending on the institution, it does work out slightly different. As some universities have it a case of you get bonus marks for attendance and for participation in class. You have those 10%. Others have it as a case of you can have up to 10% of your grade deducted for not attending classes and for not participating enough. Honestly, I find the last one very interesting to deal with, because considering the sheer number of students I have in a lecture theatre, no one gets to participate. Really, no one does. But seminars, I can see that having a value across, but it's different, you know. Depends on the uni. Remember, is that tell her to improve or you put her on camera. I like to be able to sleep occasionally. Mitchell Oates, I enjoy 280-page data dumps on Discord. It gives me something to read. I'm very much still enjoying the books. I will try and arrange something IKB 4472. I will try and arrange that. Make sure well done. The only thing after the nuclear war will be cockroaches, nuclear bunker people, Dr. Clarke doing the live streams, and the 5-hour Patreon dry docks. Yeah, both me and Drac have fairly advanced contingency of service programs in place. Something there. I think it would be funny if the Royal Navy named a battleship HMS Hortense while flyer class corvettes are being built. Yeah. Speaking of these 2 corvettes and talking about them, these ships, the French armoured corvettes, and the armoured corvette, it's no surprise that basically we have, at the same time these certain vessels start to appear, these vessels appear. Armoured corvettes. And it's a case of, right then, well, we're not building a ship which is really our fighting ship, but it's got enough armour that it can act as a deterrent to a fighting ship. But the thing is, what it is it's our present ship. It's going for wandering around the world, because these things are being kept in a fleet formation back home. These can go wherever we want them to. And the French really push into them first in many ways. As a response to that, and what the British are also building. Yes, Montanus. Thank you. Hello, Vazowski. Sean Harkness, the Kirov was the new Chimera, 80s Iowa. I fixed up my dad's old Dodge Charger will prove I've got the baddest car on the block. I can understand that one. And Montanus were supposed to be Slurdenized, but with 12 guns. Yes, that's the point. They were the real battleships, let's be honest. Montanas are basically... Montanas I look at as being conceptual heirs to the N3, i.e., how much steel can I actually make float if I really try hard enough? There is the very real belief in me that if a Montana had been built and had engaged the Yamato in a one-on-one battle, it would have been a case of, okay, neither of you managed to sink the other. It's been going on for 3 hours, you're battering each other away. What are you doing? Oh, Montana, you're going closer. You're just... Yamato, you're just keeping as far away from it as you can to try and keep the range up so it can't penetrate your armor belt. Yeah, this is just not good. Questions. You touched on a potential USN new-build cruiser as a counter to Kirov's, and had the Cold War not started winding down in the 80s, what would ships look like? Honestly, they are called the Strike Cruiser concept. They are basically 13,500 tons. Imagine a Tycho on a Long Beach hull, basically, with a lot more VLS. It's a powerful combination, and it would have been a very, very capable, interesting ship. That should be shown. Presence is also the ability to back up any projection you have power made. The ability to bluff but never allow others to see through it. With the unsaid implication that all challenges will be accepted. That is the problem. As I've said in a few other videos, occasionally your bluff gets called. And that's the problem. It's the problem for the Royal Navy in World War II. Their bluff with the Japanese gets called. The Japanese knew it was a bluff, the Royal Navy knew it was a bluff, everyone knew it was a bluff. And that's the trouble. And I like this idea of 7 to 9 nuclear powered Burks. Mm-hmm. They were supposed to... Yeah, the strike cruisers were also supposed to have 8-inch guns, which would have been kind of interesting, because if you'd had an 8-inch gun cruiser going around, nuclear-powered, 8-inch guns, and with... I think they were planning on 50% more missiles, or roughly that. So, Tychos have 61 in each of their VLS cells. And I forget what that works out as. It's, hang on, it's 8 sets of 8 with 3 cells taken out for different pods being put in, isn't it? If I remember correctly. If I remember correctly, that's what it is. So, I thought it was... No, hang on, that doesn't work. I'm not sure how it works. Okay, but I think that they were... I seem, for some reason, in my back of my head, but this could be completely wrong, so please do not quote me on it. On the back of my head is that they would have roughly gone up by... 23 per cell, so they'd have been 294. No, hang on, no. 284. 284 sets, which would have been total combined of 168 VLS. So Tychos have 122, yes. It's a fun scenario because of thinking about that and the sheer amount of VLS that's bringing. Honestly, don't take the strong way. For me on exam papers and everything, I've always said do it on computers. I'm dyslexic, so I've done all my exams on computers since I was 15 anyway. And I don't understand people who make their students handwrite their exam papers once they're at university. I sit there and look at them and go, I couldn't handwrite that much or that fast. I'm completely out of practice. I can still write with my hand, but I don't think I've done it in... If you take out signing my name... I have probably not written anything other than a postcard in less than 3 years. Royal Smith, Royal Progress, the 16th century version of winning Eurovision? Not really. There's less terrible singing in a Royal Progress. Nice one. Considering the actual UK Atlanta, the K25 was canned due to lack of 5.25-inch guns. Yes, but I don't even think that would have been that good in comparison to the Atlanta. I think the Atlanta has advantages in logistical terms. Hello, Wayne. Ooh. Oh no, surely Henry VIII's and Royal Progress could out-eat Elizabeth the First one. Actually, disturbingly not. They did some account measurements of people who hosted Henry VIII versus people who hosted Elizabeth the First, and she ate more. Are we going to get another pitch for Stanflex? Let's see. Yes, there is one coming up. Wow, 2 questions in 4 hours? Ouch, even my law examination story in 3 hours, 45 minutes, and had 25 minutes extra time. I wouldn't advise doing all 6 in 2 weeks, though. Yeah, I give them 4 hours, and if you want 25% extra time, you're more than welcome to do it, because it's just an extra hour for me sitting there watching you. I agree, Mike Cavallo, and missiles and aircraft can't replace the sustained firepower of big guns. Let's put it this way. NATO, and this was a discussion I was involved in recently, NATO fights differently, so NATO will go for the precision strikes. And they will use all sorts of systems, which will mean they'll use them very quick. They'll hopefully not have to use them at the same rate as others might be using them. In terms of rate of use of munitions. But I still think the idea of how long the stocks last is very, very optimistic. Listen, how can lack of the 5.25 guns have been avoided? As considering the actual UK Atlanta, the K25 was canned due to lack of 5.25 guns. Get the production facilities going earlier, or alternatively, get an actual dual-purpose 5-inch gun or something going that's big and that can be put on destroyers as well as cruisers, and actually be building it in scalable enough numbers. The trouble with 5.25, it was kind of too niche. All the destroyers were using 4.7. They were trying to aim for a 4.5. They've also got the 4-inch. That's the trouble for the British in World War II. Too many different gun types going on. Alfred B28, could you refit the Alaska class with 5-inch 54, or would you have to build a subclass? You could refit, but why? In the 100-year period, do you think gun cruisers ever took a wrong turn development? If so, what was it, and how long before it was realised? Oh, we'll be getting to it. There's a good example, but there's certain periods where... Let's put it this way. There's a big difference between no armour and a little bit of armour. And there's a big difference between your survivability if you've got no armour versus a little bit of armour. It's one of those issues which people sometimes forget. They, think that because it has so little armour, then what's the point in having it? What's the point in having that vessel if there's so little armour on it? And I know where they're coming from. I know the point they're making. I understand it. It's not a good one. It really isn't. They are basically basing everything around the idea that it's all or nothing. And the thing is, a battleship, etc., has the size and space that it can afford to be all or nothing. But a cruiser with no armour at all is in a very weak position. Because that means it has no survivability, because it has no space. It hasn't got the size and space of the battleship. It's not designed to do that. So, one of the interesting things is when you start talking about some of the cruisers which are built at various points, they have no armour at all. The unprotected cruisers. They're very attractive for a while. But they're really not a good idea for actually doing the cruiser role in terms of wartime. In terms of presence, it's good when those unprotected cruisers start being called sloops. Because that's basically pointing out, hang on, these are not cruisers. These are not. They have no survivability. And that's the whole point about a cruiser. It is supposed to have a measure of survivability, because it's an inheritor of a frigate. And frigates had survivability. By gum, they had survivability. Admittedly, there is the interesting discussion around rasays and all that stuff, and we're talking about that in 60-second videos. But it's a fun scenario you're dealing with. The really interesting thing for me with the cruiser is kind of like the fact of where the naming comes from, because the British, to an extent, push the name of the cruiser comes through because they don't want to keep calling things corvettes, because that's a French name. But there is also a good argument that the cruiser as a name is chosen by the Junot, and it comes from them. And again, this gets you back to the unprotected cruiser, which is which allows a weaker power to say we have more ships than we do have, but they're ships which should never be anywhere near any fighting because they're unprotected. But having some armour helps. Having some armour makes a difference. Oh, food's arrived. Hello, do I have to pay pat tax? Hello. Oh, good Lord. So pat tax. Hello. Oh.
It's all for you.
No. There's a burger in there for you.
Sorry.
Alright, don't worry. Hello. Got your Fanta? Just put it down. You're just watching my food now, aren't you? You gonna go? Gone. Yes. Enjoy. Right. Yeah. Yeah. That was the assistant, fluffy research assistant. Kind of visit. And look, all those iron gun types make you think of World War II German logistics. Yes. That is the problem. The trouble is, there's a temptation when you're big enough. When you're a large enough power, there is a temptation to pursue the perfect solution for every problem. It's the trouble. I ordered a burger for my sister because she wanted one but then didn't want one. And she has her burgers with no bun. So that's weird. The reason it becomes a temptation is because you can theoretically order enough of all these gun types for efficiencies of scale to kick in, which is great. But it's also not that great because you don't have to logistically support them. Now, this has been fine for the British in World War One. I mean, fine for the British in World War One because most of the fighting takes place in the North Sea. As far as the British are concerned when they're looking at it in their official history, because that's what Beatty cared about. And most of the fighting taking place in the North Sea, the logistics is very short range. You're getting the supplies directly from the factory. Once you're fighting around the world, going, we have 4-inch, we have a 4.7-inch, we have 5-inch, we have 5-inch, 5.25-inch, 5.5-inch. You know, you've got too much. Excuse me a second. Now we need to see me picking something out of my tooth. Tim Richards, for a bit of fun, can you formulate 12 questions off the top of your head for us? Not now, but I'll add them into the end of the video, which will be the long patrol for this. How's that sound? Come on, we go. Stockpiles and precision weapons. The latter are nice, but can NATO get rid of the deer grid square type firepower, especially in a contested airspace where airstrikes are limited? Well, the assumption for NATO is always that it will get air power. The assumption is they will get air power, and they'll have air power superiority, and you can understand where that assumption comes from. I'm not sure if I agree with it as being as guaranteed. I've seen a lot. Look, one of the things that comes in, even in cruisers in this period, a good example is the Chinese and Japanese kept buying the same cruisers from Britain. They'd have ships which are very similar. And this caused issues in the Sino-Japanese War in that the Chinese weren't sure if they were looking at a Japanese ship or another Chinese ship. Especially when you had some of the similarities in flags going on at this period. And for the Russians in Ukraine, they have an issue in that the Ukrainians are mostly using a lot of equipment which is Soviet. Same as the Russians. Soviet. It looks very, very similar to the equipment they have. They know the details of each other's equipment, backwards and forwards. They have the manuals. It makes identification and clearance of operations far more difficult. Makuch, agree with you on armor. Splinter damage lets in water, so even splinter protection is valuable. Yes, and putting armor around engines and giving yourself some kind of armoured space inside the hull, protected space inside the hull, for things like magazines, etc., is useful. 3-inch doesn't get much attention because the trouble is 3-inch comes in a bit too late. It doesn't really get the use. Oh. She had onions. Ugh. Mm-hmm. Drinking. Seems like Germans went from saving weight and triple turrets in Deutschlands and Ks to overbuilding and twin turrets in the Hippers and the planned light cruisers. Why were German designers regressive? To be honest, all navies, I've said this, I use this phrase quite a lot, are conservative in their leaps forward. You want to make a leap into the unknown, you do it in the most conservative fashion possible so that you can walk it back if you need to, but also you have the security, you have things are going to work. In the case of the German designers, they make things as over-engineered as they do because if anything goes wrong, they're going to get the blame for it. And in Nazi Germany, that isn't that good. Even in Weimar Republic isn't good. Dave Newton, with the point on so little armour still being worth it, consider what was said on Drax's video about Cunningham and improvising armour to protect a bridge crew from rifle fire. These things help. They really do. It's one of those sort of scenarios where people go, oh, you don't need armour. Yes, you do. You need some protection. Senator, what do you mean? A gun with the same caliber. A shell with a 4.7 inch diameter. I also know with 4.7 inch. Another also with 4.7 inch, but a 1mm longer shell that blows up in the other gun, and they will both only 4.7. Oh yeah, that sounds like the British logistics. Right. Given the smart range boosted multi-purpose shells, anti-air warfare, anti-surface warfare, even anti-submarine warfare, yeah, to an extent you can do some diving shells. 8-inch cruisers increasingly make sense. Imagine how much more technology you could squeeze into an 8-inch versus 5-inch shell. Helps offset costs of missiles. Agreed. I think that's one of the reasons why the Russians have different official calibers for artillery tank guns, even though they are the same width, 150, 255, 122 and 125 mm. It does help with things, but again, there isn't that much difference. There's only 3 mils of difference. That doesn't make that much of a difference overall in kind of visibility. Plus, good interesting. Where do you put limited armor on unprotected cruiser? Well, the armor deck helps, but honestly, I would put it around the engine spaces. And probably also the magazines. Give them some protection. Which shows the lightweight 8-inch gun they tested in the 70s was capable of firing paveway guided projectiles and successfully tested with that gun. The light gun, according to IO2, was just one of the 1855 autoloaders from a Des Moines in a new turret, new mount. Wouldn't surprise me. Soon, really little versus no armor. Do you think there's a tipping point where little becomes worse than none by initiating something that would otherwise overpenetrate with minimal damage? See, the thing is, if you're talking about that in a cruiser's perspective, let's say this. Think about it. How lightly built would you have to be that a 6-inch shell keeps going and carries on through? Now, I can understand you going, right then, I don't want to build this, so I would like a battleship shell to pass straight through. If you can do that, that's fine. But a 6-inch shell, or even an 8-inch shell, in nicest way, there is no chance of that probably going the whole way through your ship and coming out the other side. Just not. And then you've got 4-inch shell, 4.7-inch shell. If we consider there are Italian cruisers we're going to be talking about soon, the condottieri, who were, whilst they are officially taken out by the torpedoes or the destroyers involved, they were deluged in so much 4.7-inch gunfire that frankly they couldn't do anything because those shells were ripping them to pieces. If you're a 6-inch cruiser and 4.7-inch guns are ripping you to pieces, you have a problem. A big one. So how accurate are an estimates on ships' cost to maintain? In 1911, it was estimated the hood would cost £539,000 per year to maintain. They're usually within line of inflation, but it also depends on what other tech you start adding on. You start adding on stuff, things go up dramatically. Carvan goes wood. On the other hand, we had Serbia in 1999, with a well-maintained but obsolete Sovietish air defence and overwhelmingly NATO air force, and a downed F-117 and some more, and the sound threat never fully eliminated. I would agree. I'm not sure quite about the story of the F-117 going down. There was always part of me which looked at some of the holes and thought, those holes don't look like gunfire holes to me. Or even missile fragment holes. They looked more like holes added in afterwards to give it the effect of having more holes in it than it actually did. Which sounds terrible, I know, because I'm sure no one would think when they brought an aircraft down, this doesn't look like we damaged it that much. They might try and claim that it just crashed itself. So we've got to make sure there are lots of holes in it to try and make it look like we've done it. And what we've got that can prick some holes in it. What have I done? Sorry, to clarify, they're all apparently 125 or 155, but listed as a different caliber, so listed as 122 or 152 for logisticians, trying to make things idiot-proof for the squaddies. I can understand that one. Because it's not idiot-proof. It's this is the thing I try and make this point out to people sometimes in logistics. Let's say you're a young corporal organising the supply, the loading of a lorry going to a company, going to a unit. You have been awake for 18 hours. This is your 60th lorry you're overloading. You're loading up and checking. You have dealt with more the rest of the previous day, more the previous day, more the previous day. Your brain is running through. There have been airstrikes on your positions. You have heard about friends who have been killed. You know you're working in an ammunition dump, so you know you are surrounded by stuff which is a primo target by the enemy. And by the way, if it goes up, there is not a smoking chance in that you will get through it. Now, so much idiot-proof as stressed human-proof. Alfred B228, if there had not been the 10,000 ton 8-inch gun limitations, would the RN consider building 13-inch gun armored cruisers? I don't think so. I don't think the British would go for that. 12-inch maybe, I don't think... Going 13.5-inch is pretty big for a cruiser gun. Very, very big for a cruiser gun, actually. If someone gave you £82 for books, what would you buy right now in terms of popular and narrative history? Oh, good lord. What would I buy right now if I had... This is a difficult question because, let's be honest, I can just log into my book, into my account and see what roughly would come to £82. Well, there's a new version of the British Battleships of the Victorian Era by Norman Freeman, which is pretty good. There's Before the Ironclad by D.K. Brown, which is fairly good, and that gets you up to 17 plus £34.50. That's £41.50. £51.50. So I've now got £32.50 left. Paul Kennedy's Victory at Sea, Naval Pan, The Transformation of the Modern World. That is another £17, £17.40, so that gets me getting there closely, and I've got roughly £14 to go. Ooh. There's just so many good ones out there for about price. Kevin Ray, if the Chinese adopted 8-inch guns for a class of ship, I wonder how quickly you'd see 8-inch guns introduced in Western navies. That's an interesting question. Depend. If the Chinese called them cruisers, then it could be really interesting. Number 2, the AGS advanced gun system worked fine. However, only a guided round was ever made for it. And with the Zumwalt order cut from 22, I think, to 3, yes, price per round skyrocketed until it was 1 million per round. That doesn't surprise me. Fits with roughly what I heard about it. Number reductions. If for the RN, if you've got a class of GWs, 96 or below, say 8, is there any room for improvement in rapid-fire 6-inch gun? There are jamming issues on the Tigers, I think, but beyond that, is there anything else to improve on with that gun? Jamming issues and maintenance issues were the things you had to improve with the 6-inch gun. So yeah, if you'd had more of them though, you could probably have sorted out. Coming as it. One documentary arranged a meeting between the F-117 jock and the SAM unit commander. Yeah, I know. Let's put it this way. I have no doubt that they shot him down. That's not the thing I'm pointing out. I'm just saying that some of the holes looked highly suspect to me. Okay, look. In the nicest way, when I see neat, perfectly round holes on an aircraft which has been shot down, I immediately start to think that was not done by a high-speed moving object. And it shows, I could see the RN going with an updated version of the venerable 9.2-inch gun, sounds only treaty. I think they were heading that way anyway. Honestly, I'm looking at... If you're looking at some of the designs which are done alongside the ones that produced the Hawkins class, there's one which has... They actually have turreted 9.2-inch guns, and I forget how big are turrets and how many. I think it's 4 twin turrets they have. I think they're basically a mini Queen Elizabeth class. And that was the other option. And if that had been built, you could imagine the limit for heavy cruisers would have been 15,000 tons and 9.2-inch guns. We had a Dreadnought armoured cruiser which had 12-inch guns. Yes, we did. Stephen Richards. So, gun cruisers. Well, the interesting thing is, for about 20 years, they're oscillating over what to do. The General Admiral in 1873 is the first armoured cruiser, and that's called a cruiser. These have been called armoured corvettes, but for a while, actual corvettes and frigates and all sorts of things exist alongside each other. Everyone's not sure what to do. And then the Esmeralda comes in. Esmeralda is probably the first protected cruiser. It's neither heavily armoured like an armoured vessel, i.e. this one, nor is it unprotected like other vessels have been. And yet, it is undoubtedly a cruiser. And it allows the Chilean Navy to get ahead. And eventually the Japanese Navy, of course, to get ahead. But the point is, this is the point at which cruisers start to become, okay, these things are going to be cruisers because they're in relation to this. Far more than anything else. Far more than the General Admiral and the various other things which would come on after it, including, of course, the very interesting British ship, the Absolute Lemon, the Royal Navy produced. The Esmeralda sets the standard, and everyone else is compared to it. Thank God for the British it comes from British Yard, otherwise it would have completely dispelled the Royal Navy's myth of superiority. I'm watching an interesting discussion starting to take up with the M1156 round. Precision guided kinetic round, is it? Or forget from memory. But you always know Melanie is in a good mood when she asks a question which basically goes, you know what this is, right? Precision guided kit fuse. It turns any 155mm NATO shell into a guided shell, yes. I was sort of remembering right. But no, they didn't use that on the ships because... Oh, honestly, there was so many different things. Apparently it wouldn't work with a 200 and something millimeter shell, or would it work with salt water, and there's all sorts of weird stuff they tried to put on around it. Everyone's right. Given that the hit-and-miss nature of conversion of gun cruisers to missile cruisers, were there late war cruisers built with missile conversion in mind? No. Let's put it this way. No one had any idea missiles were coming. Yes, they knew of missiles. Yes, there were things like the unrotated projectiles, there were the V2 and these sort of things. But how the stuff ends up developing is completely unforeseen to an extent by naval designers, in that if you had made the case, oh, let's build our ship so it can have this conversion later on, you would have been laughed out the room by various various economists, various of the people of Treasury, etc., in the room. Melanie, stop applying to logic to it. The basic criteria was this. Okay? They wanted to cancel the Zumwalt program. They wanted to cancel the gun because they decided that the future wasn't going to be those things and they didn't need them. And they didn't want to pay the money. So it was very expensive. And so none of the sensible logical solutions which have made it far cheaper did they pursue. Instead, they looked at the most expensive option, said that was the only option, and therefore cancelled it. Karen, the Washington Treaty doesn't specify 6-inch versus 8-inch for light or heavy versus heavy cruiser. The Washington Treaty just gives a maximum limitation of 8-inch. So the Washington Naval Treaty doesn't. Yeah. The limit of limits of escorts and ships is that you're limited to no more than 10,000 tons maximum displacement of the ship. There's no cumulative displacement limitation, and 8-inch guns. That's it. That's the only limitation the Washington Treaty places on ships below capital ship level, which is, again, why I make the case I do about Lexington-class cruisers, well, Lexington-class carriers, is that when you build them, there is not a good reason to not build an extra cruiser with those guns fitted on instead of putting those guns on top of the carrier. There's no need to, because there's no limitation on the number of cruisers you can build. Hello, Donrick. Next slide. No, the other problem was the magazine was automated and configured so it can only handle its own proprietary guide around. You'd have had to rework the entire amount. Oh, yes, of course. Stop applying logic. How to defeat any counterposition is a discussion. I would agree, but this was the whole problem for me with the Zumwalt program and it's being cancelled. All the obvious things coming through were being shot down. And one of the interesting things about that, and Mitchell Oates does point out, the magazine was automated, it is. The question is, how is the magazine automated? Is the magazine automated to something that it just gets the shell from where it's loaded to where it goes? Or does it read something on the shell so it knows what it is? Okay. What's it reading? So all I need to do, therefore, is teach it, or program into it, another variable, another thing, another system for it to read, or rather another label. So it goes, hang on, it's not this label, this label, this label, it's this label, which means this. Okay, beep up, and this is how I organize it. But that, by the way, in nicest way in defense terms, is not going to be easy. It's going to be expensive. But it's not going to be as expensive as probably it was being made out by people. But that's the trouble. Mr. Cerrone's end. There is a limitation on cruisers the USM could build. It's called Congress. Exactly. That is a problem. Dominic, watch the new Norwegian movie, Battle of Narvik. I'll have a cruiser question when we get to the interwar years. If it's why didn't the Norwegians build any cruisers? I don't have a good answer, because the Swedes build some decent ones. The British did do the same thing with the Type 45, yes. We decided we needed 12, ordered 9, took delivery of 6. And he was suddenly saying, they're £1 billion destroyers! They're not. You're dividing the development program, the development costs for developing them over 6 ships, and yeah, it gets to £1 billion. But each ship actually only cost roughly $500,000 to build, $500 million to build, and was actually getting cheaper. So the thing is, you'd have probably, if you built all 12, you'd have probably had an average unit cost of about 350, 400 million per unit to build. I'd say 400. Let's be conservative on the expensive side. So 12 times 4 would have been 4.8 billion. Right? Still had your 3 billion cost in terms of development costs. Takes the program up to 7.8 billion. Let's say everything all in is 8 billion. Okay. Divided by 12 units. That gets down to $750 million. No. That gets down to roughly 2/3 of a billion, doesn't it? Per each unit. Doesn't have quite the same ring to it as £1 billion destroyer, does it? 2/3 of a £1 billion destroyer. No, it's about HMS Carrier versus a train gun. Yes, there were quite a few Royal Navy ships fighting off with train guns during the Norway campaign. The Germans seemed to find quite a stock of them somehow. Mitchell Oates. Now, teaching guns is to read a shell. Just think of the trouble you have scanning barcodes at automated checkouts. Now imagine trying to do so reliably under the conditions in a gale. Well, it's not handling outside. It's inside the ship. The shell will be moving along a track. It's usually organized on a carousel, so they're going around on a carousel, which means they're fixed in position. You don't have them rolling around. They're going to, as long as they've been placed, broadly speaking, properly by the humans when they've been loaded in, and they've probably actually been loaded by automatically in place anyway, by the system, they'll have been placed, so they'll be clamped in position, and the barcode will definitely be exactly where it is, where it's supposed to be. And if they can't read the barcode, they just go on to the next one in the carousel. They just flick on. They don't wait. And they report an error, and a human goes in and checks it and works out what the problem is. It's a different system. It's a far more organized system than necessarily you find in your checkouts. It could well be some form of barcode reader, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's more likely some form of, well, the things that you scan with your phone. USS Atlanta. Now, this is the first American cruiser. I just find it amazing. And I find the Americans getting involved in cruisers quite cool. But I find the fact that the Atlanta turns up as a cruiser quite so often is sort of interesting. She was inactivated in 1999 as a Los Angeles class attack submarine, so currently waiting for the next Atlanta. She's been a Confederate ironclad, a protected cruiser, which this is what she is, launched in 1884. She's been an anti-aircraft cruiser. She's been a light cruiser. She was sunk in the Battle of Guadalcanal. So she's had a real cruiser life, and she's been a Los Angeles class attack submarine. So yeah. If I had my way, this would be the name given to the first DDGX. They would be the Atlanta class. Hi, Steve Clarke. Actually, QR codes, those all seem to be much more fidgety and unreliable. But the thing is, you can read them from all sorts of angles, so it wouldn't matter what position the gun was in, the shell was in. You could read it. Yeah, she was used by the Union Navy as well. That's cool. Atlanta has a really cool history. As a name for the US Navy, the Atlanta is a very good name. But this is still my favourite Atlanta. And she was armed with, those were 6-inch guns. She had 2 8-inch guns, appropriately. 6 6-inch guns, 30 caliber, the same as our 8-inch. 2 6-pounder guns, that's 57mm. 2 3-pounder, 47mm. And 2 single-pounder guns. Hotchkiss revolving cannon. And some 2.45 Gatling guns. And she's one of the... Not only is she their first cruiser... Pardon me. But she's one of the US Navy's first 4 steel ships. And again, apologies. As I said, not 100% well this evening, so... A few issues going on. Thank you, Jack Ray. Well, I had to look her up because I wanted to see if I could get a model of this ship and build it. And I couldn't find one. And so I've sent her to actually her plans to one of my colleagues at work, at one of the units I work at, who has access to a 3D printer, and I've gone, could you print this? We'll see what happens. He's ex-Royal Navy. There's an even chance he does. They had two .45 Gatling guns, so they're two of the guns, and they're .45 is their caliber. She was a very good little ship for the US Navy. She got a new triple expansion engine, and the 6-inch guns converted to rapid firing with brass case ammunition in 1897 to 1899. She served in the US Navy till 1912. She's literally launched in 1884 and commissioned in 1886, and serves till 1912, which is pretty darn good if you consider all the technology and all the things that happened during that period. She really does change. Anuk, when they decided to cut the B-22 order to 21, they should have just cancelled it. It became nearly useless another. Never be able to surge more than 15 on max effort for max effort strike. Think about having the B-2 is it's the kind of weapon which, if you have, you don't need a lot of them to make everyone have to adapt to the fact you have them. On the off chance you use them. Pardon me. Where's my... there's my thing. I haven't sneezed for a while. Hello, Mike Sigrist. And that's the point with it, sort of sometimes with these cruisers. When we talk about them in economic warfare terms. You don't have to have a lot of ships which are capable of being acting as surface raiders for everyone to have to worry about them being a surface raiders. Look at the German Navy. They have 3 of the Deutschland class. They're absolutely terrible cruisers. Absolutely. But the fact they have them means that everyone has to work out how they're going to deal with them. The odds of any large number of those vessels being available and going off being operating around the world, very low. The fact that they have 2 out in 1939 is completely, well, it's just based on the fact that there is a very good Raider basically pushes his ships out to sea as much as he can in 1939. He couldn't have kept it up for much longer. And that is a real that is the reality. But the fact is, because they had them, you had to factor it into your planning. So the B2, okay, yes, they only have 21 of them. But I have to factor those into my planning. Because it doesn't matter if 1 turns up, or 15 turn up. If I'm not prepared to deal with them, or don't have a plan in place for how I'm going to deal with their attack, then the 1 turning up is going to completely overmatch my force structure. So you got, I'm guessing that these were never meant as sailing vessels, so why are the yard arms so massive? Because they were sailing vessels. You have to remember, these ships were supposed to operate under sail as well as steam. Because the thing is, they could run out of coal and still need to get around. And coal supplies, when they're being built in 1880s, is not guaranteed. Look at some of the places a cruiser will work. So unless you want your ship to get stuck someplace and not be able to move because it's not got any coal, you'd better have sails. Going on dock, were the long 6-pounder guns on Mark 1 tanks ex-cruiser secondary guns? Also, did the guns from scrapped Mark 1s end up on Merchant Escorts Model 2? I think they were old Navy guns. I think at least the initial ones were. And I don't think they ended up on Merchant and Escorts in Model 2. Because there was enough 6-inch guns still going around. You're right, Hanuk. 20. In 1892, well, HMS Warrior, which had been a third-class armoured screw battleship in 1887, as she was then defined, was reclassified in May 1892 as a first-class armoured cruiser. By the way, she went from being a first-rate armoured battleship to being a first-rate ironclad frigate, to being a first-rate first-rate battleship, screw battleship, first-rate armored, to being third-class armored, to being first-class armored cruiser, without any changes whatsoever. Without any at all. John Redmond, the 122mm gun on the Soviet ISU-122 was a converted naval gun. It used 2-part ammunition, limited its rate of fire as a tank hunter. I think I heard that somewhere else, and I think they thought it would still be useful because, in the nicest way, if it hit you, and the rate of fire of tank destroyers was not that great anyway. If it hit you, though, it was pretty much guaranteed to penetrate your armor. Sorry, I am doing maths in my head, which is always a challenge. Sorry. Starting to feel better. I should have eaten earlier today. I do apologise. I don't know. I've got so much family stuff coming up. I forgot. I think I missed your answer to my question about blessed or possessed cruisers. I don't think I've seen your question, Rapid Razor, on blessed or possessed cruisers. Rapid Razor, Dr. Clarke, HS Belfast comes to mind. But can you think of a gun cruiser that was blessed by a deity or possessed by a demon? Oh, I'm fairly sure USS Honolulu has a guardian angel. And, I'm fairly certain, because of all the random stuff she did, Birmingham did as well. I'm not sure if cruisers I would ever describe as being possessed, etc., but I would describe some as having guardian angels. Actually, it's not just the automation. The shell handling gear was physically incapable of handling conventional 155mm shells. Again, you can alter those sort of things, as I said. Sigma, I may have got a question on it. How did the Family War game go? Family War games are next week. That's part of the travelling we have next week. Literally, one of our family members has a farm which has an entire... How do I put it? Well, basically, they had an old barn. And the options were knock it down or turn it into something else, because they couldn't use it for animals anymore because of the way it's... Whilst it's quite a big space, it's not really suitable for animals and the modern equipment you need for them, because it's a dairy farm. And they basically adapted it. If anyone asks, no, there are going to be little tiny cousins going around, so no filming. I'm not putting that on the channel. In a nice way, there's enough of my relatives who are under the age of 10 going to be there, let alone the ones under 6 going to be there. And certainly a lot under the age 18. I haven't painted the tanks yet. I haven't managed to build the tanks yet. I haven't had a chance. This is going to sound terrible. I'm looking forward to when I'm not doing a video a day. My first intention is to have a little try and get some more sleep. My second intention after that is to catch up on painting, take a couple of weeks to rest up, and then start on a whole load of writing. Cameron, why did the German cruisers on foreign stations during World War I not have sails as backward ocean? I thought access to coal was a huge headache for Spain at SMS end. Because if you put up sails, etc., like that as your backup, they'll interfere in you having your centerline guns. Basically, sails are a great system, but as coal becomes more reliable, you can get rid of that great big amount of rigging, all those masts, all those systems there, and suddenly the centerline of your deck becomes useful for something else. So you have turrets. And that's what really gets rid of the sails. Turrets. Plus, coal by that point was a lot more ubiquitous, and whilst it was problematic for von Spee, he basically managed to buy it or procure it from wherever he needed to go. to keep going. Bitron, if you gave Warrior new engines, she could have become like a cruiser like USS Chicago, so 9.2-inch guns on the upper deck in sponsons and 6-inch guns on the broadside. She could have done. Lord help everyone. But they wanted a name for other ships. Warrior's a fine traditional name in the Royal Navy, and it's got a good pedigree. Oh, that's HMCS Star. Sorry. Sort of question. I forgot I had food in my mouth. That is HMCS Star. Steve Ewing has a good book. Norman Freeman has a good book on US cruisers. Steve Ewing has a good book on US cruisers. Stefan Tersbach's book is worth a read. Werner F. Milewski, I can never pronounce her name, but they have a book called Fighting Ships of the US Navy. And that's £32. And I think that's fairly decent from memory. From memory, he says. Let's get back to 2 long patrols so we give me some time to catch up. That is the plan. I will try and keep up with the shorts though. I think I'll try and keep up with a short a day because I think they're fun. I might not always get a short out every day, but I'll try and keep a short up most days. Here's the thing. The SMS Blucher, as a cruiser, is actually pretty darn good. It really is. As a battle cruiser, it's terrible. But as a cruiser, it's fairly decent. It is an armoured cruiser. Now, yes, it has wing turrets, which I really don't like. And it has casemates, which I have strong objections to. But it has 12 8.3-inch guns, which are pretty darn sensible for the time period if you're building a cruiser. If the British had been building armoured cruisers rather than battle cruisers, theirs probably wouldn't have been that dissimilar to this. Probably 9.2-inch guns instead. But not massively dissimilar. And let's see. 3 triple expansion steam engines. Top speed 25.4 knots. 3 screw propellers. This is not a bad ship. It's just a bad ship when it's compared to what it ends up fighting. Because the trouble is, the Germans fall hook, line and sinker. Well, let's be honest. What happens is the Germans try and get a jump on what the British are building, so they have an answer to it already. Da-na-na! And it turns out Fisher's played them. Well, that's an interesting idea. Blucher is the first real heavy cruiser. Considering she has 21cm, that's 8.3-inch guns. Or 210mm. That would actually been a really good improvement on heavy cruiser. If Blucher had been the model for what they're deciding the limiting was a heavy cruiser. 15,842 tons in normal. I'd probably say about 16,000 tons would be the limit then. And 8.3-inch guns, so probably would make the limit 9-inch guns, considering what they did with 7.5s. Yeah, you could make some really interesting ships then. Mark Harkness, it was a good guess at what a Dreadnought armoured cruiser would be. But Fisher meant Dreadnought as a cruiser, not cruiser built in Dreadnought pattern. Mm-hmm. It works. John Sykes, how does it see? The US Olympia, as built, had both centerline turrets and sails. 4.5 rigged, but these were removed early on. Yes, because there were issues with having centerline sails and centerline turrets. No. John, would a mini Blucher have won the TAN scheme of 9.2-inch turrets better fit German needs? No. Mitch notes, the Blucher's problem, the Germans brought a cruiser to a capital ship fight. Yeah. More than that, if you consider it's a cruiser laid down in 1907, launched in 1908. If we consider the pace of generational change in ship design. Well, in that time period, the British will go through 12-inch to 13.5-inch to 15-inch guns. So there's 3 generations of that, 3 generations of ships arguable within that period. So it's brought to a capital ship fight where it's fighting ships which are 2 generations younger than it. And they're capital ships. That's not fair! Mm-hmm. No, she shouldn't have been anywhere near a battlecruiser squadron. The fact she was entirely there for numbers' sake. Mark Harkness. Now, if Blucher had been the present ship in the Med versus the Goen suddenly makes Dogger Bank far more challenging. Yes and no. Goban replacing Blucher doesn't make Dogger Bank ultimately more challenging, but it does make it slightly more even. But the British probably still have the same luck. Although the Germans might have a slightly higher overall speed. Good evening, Dr. Clarke. Would the RN have benefited more in the interwar period from a larger number of supercruisers, 9-12 inch, over battle cruisers at 15 inch? Would it push the faster 16-inch Nelrod over battle cruisers? So basically what I'm presuming you're saying is that the British have to lose their Hood, Renown and Repulse and all other battle cruisers for some reason as part of the treaty negotiations, but in return can retain the same level of capital ships as they would originally have, so probably get more Nelrods over and are allowed super cruisers. Let's say they're allowed to match capital ships with super cruisers. They're allowed 15 35,000 ton capital ships. That would probably be better. It's going to be better because it allows you... Let's put it this way. You get rid of Hood. Let's say you somehow get the British to get rid of Hood, Renown, Repulse, and Tiger. All 9. It's Tiger, isn't it? Yes. Well, you get rid of all four of those, you probably end up with about 6 Nelrods. If you're building a class of 6, you don't have to make them quite so as insanely orientated around survivability as you necessarily do, but also you probably do push them up to the 35,000 ton limit. So you might have just a tad less armor and a few more tons to play around with. You're probably talking about 28 knot plus ships to regenerate a fast squadron for the capital ship fleet. That also tends to makes you probably push the Queen Elizabeth up to 28 knots to try and keep the group as contiguous as possible. And then you have 15 ships. Yeah, it will be beneficial. Sorry, someone's asked me a very tough question to answer. Would I consider Mr. Serenian gun cruisers the most cost-effective units of the area? It depends on what you want to do. In your peacetime, if you're doing the President's mission and just tootling around the world, without a doubt, it's the one that makes most sense. It really does. But if you want to fight a battle, you're going to want a battleship. And that's ultimately the problem. Because you can make the case for any of these ships being the most value for money at their time in certain ways. If you want to do anti-submarine warfare, you don't want a cruiser, you want a destroyer or probably a sloop. So it all depends on what missions you want to do. What capabilities do you need? But on average, they could do 90% of the tasks 90% of the time. So they are definitely up there as being very cost effective for their roles. Over there again, frigates have always been, and cruisers have always been cost effective for their roles. Don't know whether to commend you for your discipline or reprimand you for missing an opportunity to troll the Germans. Grass Bay equals heavy cruiser. I've already made that comment at a couple of times. Why did the Admiral Hibber class heavy cruiser displacement vary between the five? Because the Germans had absolutely no ability at quality control when it came to different shipyards. You even find differences in their submarines, which makes it very difficult, because if you have a manual which tells you your submarine is supposed to be this and supposed to do this at this weight and this weight, and it isn't, you have to learn A, the differences of your submarine, but B, you don't have problems. Mr. Oates, I remember a few months ago when we found the 1913 plans for an RN armoured cruiser with 4 twin 9.2s and 8 6-inch guns in casemates. That would have been basically Blucher's counterpoint, and it would have been the Royal Navy's armoured cruiser. And a few of those in service in World War I would have been really interesting. Because let's say you'd had a couple of those sitting down in the Falklands. Or rather, sitting down, turning up at the Battle of Coronel. Hello! We have 8 9.2-inch guns each. Suddenly turns Coronel from being a walk in the park for the Germans, because they have the more guns and can control the range, to being the other way around. And it's far worse for them, because they haven't got anywhere to withdraw to. Bonus, I was unlucky enough to be in hospital from 18 to 26. 18 to 26. Very toxic for 4 days. I really enjoyed the 60-second broadcast. Very much unlimited charge phone. I binge watch everything you've done. Oh, thank you. I enjoy the 60-second videos. Although I have been told off because apparently I'm being naughty, because I'm now doing some of them landscape on the portrait. So people have to do that with their phone. Yes, these are the cruisers which you build so many of them you forget how many you have. This is the Royal Navy in World War I going, so we just had a report from the 11th Cruiser Squadron. I'll turn around and goes, we have an 11th Cruiser Squadron. Yes, Lord Admiral, it's currently waiting orders. Where is it waiting orders? In the Indian Ocean. What are idiots? These cruisers, sir. We have... How many town class did we build? Alternatively, these, sir. How many sea class did we build? Where are they all coming from? You know, the Royal Navy at the end of World War I practically needed to do a census to find out exactly how many cruisers they'd had in operations at various times. Because there were quite literally commanders who said, well, this cruiser turned up. It hadn't been on my official order of battle, but as it was there, I put it on. Retroactively appearing on the order of battle, because it turned up in the place where you needed it. Level 98 Bear Hunting. Why does the town class only have two 6-inch and the rest 4-inch? Because, honestly, you only need two 6-inch and the rest 4-inch for a cruiser, a light cruiser. At this point, 4-inch will do plenty of damage. And remember, the ranges you're going to be engaging at. It's a case of this is a visual range engagement ship. And when I say visual range, I mean very close visual range. It's not directed fire. Same here. Royal Navy Town class builders. Build them until I say stop. Proceeds to forget to say stop. Mm-hmm. Well, John Luke, in that scenario, so I presume you're talking about the super cruisers and the Nelrod scenario where they get rid of the battle cruisers. Would you design the super cruisers to be based on previous question, or something using all forward armament based on Nelrod or standard layout? Well, let's be honest, the county class are by their definition designed to look like Royal Navy battleships, specifically Queen Elizabeth and R class. So I'd probably still build them to look like Queen Elizabeth and R class, but then I have an option of building some new ships to look like my new battleships. And if I'm building my new battleships to Nelrod design, then I might as well build my cruisers to Nelrod design. So I would build them to be 9-gun vessels. 3 turrets forward. Basically, they'd be built to look like a Nelrod from a distance. Or whatever version of a Nelrod I'm building. So that you're never quite sure whether you're dealing with one of my Nelrods or one of my cruisers. But if Burka had been in the Med, first cruiser squadron would have engaged. Her and Bledisloe wouldn't have reached Constantinople, and the Ottomans might not have joined the war. Definitely, and that could have changed the entirety of World War One. So it's kind of interesting change you can make in that scenario. And let's be honest, it still wouldn't have changed the end result of the war because, well, whether the Ottomans don't get involved or do get involved, it probably just makes a difference in terms of when the war ends for the Germans. It would mean you probably would have far less of a Mediterranean campaign. Matthew Melaki, hello. Would the USN have benefited from the next batch of the Pennsylvania class armor cruisers being longer with extra 8-inch guns encasements rather than slightly wider in 10-inch Tennessee class? If they'd been built longer, they'd have probably been faster, and you could have perhaps made them also longer ranged. There are trade-offs, there are fors and against. There is definitely an advantage to doing it, but there's also an advantage to doing it the way they did. So it's about picking which one best suits you. Mm-hmm. I've got to sort that one out. I'm going to have to... This is going to sound completely strange, but I'm going to have to get one of those Amazon guiding wire things for my mouse wire, because the mouse, because the computer is over there and the mouse is over here. The wire keeps catching in here between the button and the mouse, and it's a case of, why is it not clicking? Oh, it's caught again. So I'm going to have to get, I've already got an extension cable, so I'm going to have to get one of those sort of tab things you put down on your desk to take the wire, so the wire automatically comes out from about this end, so it's straight instead of coming at an angle the whole time. And Blue Elves, those low deck calcium guns were so wet and crappy. They're just annoying to me. What were the effective ranges for a town class then? The 1910 town class, well... the maximum firing range of a 4-inch naval gun is 11,600 yards at 15 degrees. X elevation. Which is a maximum form of elevation. Now, on a town class cruiser, you're probably talking effective firing range in terms of you're going to hit your target most of the time, probably about 8,000 yards. And your ideal fighting range is probably 6,000 to 5,000 yards. Probably. What main gun would you have on the narrow cruiser? As they were talking about super cruisers earlier, and they said 12-inch gun. They were 12-inch gun super cruisers, I think. So they would have been 12-inch guns on the earlier question. Alright, so who wins in a fight? HMS Clarke, a train gun that can hide in the turret train tunnel to reload. Well, if I remember correctly from the battles in Namsos, etc., Cairo had this problem, as did Somali. And I think Somali solved it by blowing up the tunnel. And the train gun had to go back out the other way of the tunnel, and so couldn't really do anything more. All they did was sort of piling smoke. I think with Cairo, I think it turned in a bit of a funny duel. I think the train eventually got away, but I'm not 100% sure. I don't think it got away completely intact. Let's put it this way. On the town class cruisers, the Royal Navy was still building them in 1922. Admittedly, those were for the Royal Australian Navy. That one. They completed 21. They lost 2. They were succeeded by the Arethusa class, of which the Royal Navy built 8 and lost 1. Which were also succeeded by the C class, which the Royal Navy built 28. And let's be honest, HMS Caroline stayed technically in Royal Navy service till 2011. So I think the Royal Navy got their money's worth from the C class. So yes, the Royal Navy was building quite a lot of light cruisers. Clarke, Alex, I was asked earlier about the worst cruisers, so I'm assuming this includes the Deutschlands. Which other classes would you add to list? The Deutschlands aren't necessarily bad ships. They're just not real. Let's put it this way. They are not pocket battleships. They are heavy cruisers. And as heavy cruisers, they're not really good for that either, because basically the Germans have cheated and played with the rules enough to try and get these ships. And they've done it in a way which has hobbled the ships, and I just don't appreciate that. If you're going to cheat, cheat properly. So in terms of ships which have been mucked up, and level 98 bear hunting armor tri-monitors. They're about the closest to what I think you're talking about. You're asking about. As for worse cruisers. The Condottieri annoy me because, again, you're cheating to an extent, and you're doing it in such a way you're actually ending up with ships which are not good for your crew, and it's all in pursuit of speed. Basically, it top trumps. If you ever are playing top trumps World War II, and you get one of these ships, just use the speed. Odds are, unless you're up against an Abdeel class or something like that, it's not going to be faster than you. Not on paper. Sure. Why was Australia buying a town class in 1920s, like a new build town? Couldn't you at least buy a D class? Because they were still building it in Cockatoo shipyard? That's the thing. The Australians just took a really long time building it. People like to think the Australian length of procurement is something new. It's not. It's been around for a while. My gooch, if it had been Gurkha, not Somali, she'd have followed the train into the tunnel. There's always a possibility. But remember, is it Somali or Sikh which decides to take on a battleship solo? What? No, I think both of them did it at various points. Like the Argentine Amarante Brown and 25 de Mayo built under the interesting hybrid designs. They are interesting ships. I'd agree those two heavy cruisers are interesting vessels. They are, as I think I mentioned in the video on the Trento class, derived from them. But they are interesting ships. They're not bad design. I have to admit, I do find some of the changes they do after the Second World War quite surprising. And there, of course, though, they did buy a light cruiser, the La Argentina, which is an adapted Arefusa class light cruiser, with 3 triple guns. So it's a 9-gun Arefusa class, which is a really cool ship from the UK. The end of the class of what happens when you put destroyer guns on a light cruiser hull. Did they ever put heavy cruiser guns on a light cruiser hull, or light cruiser guns on a heavy cruiser? I think I've answered that question. I'm fairly sure I did a video on Wichita not that long ago, which is basically heavy cruiser guns on a light cruiser hull, technically. Because the US Navy found they had a really good light cruiser hull, but they wanted a heavy cruiser. How do you sushi? Sushi? Just got home from it. Would you trade high angle, or rather dual purpose, 4.7 tribals for didos on a 1-for-1 basis? Or is the cost volume advantage key for ditching didos if you have workable high angle, properly dual purpose 4.7? If you have a working, properly purpose dual 4.7, so you have those guns that can all go up to 80 degrees, I could probably build. Let's see. I'm just checking a figure. Hang on, I had the figures in my book, don't I? There it is. Why am I looking elsewhere when I have it in my own book staring at me? Excuse me a second. Ay, caramba. Sorry, I'm looking for my figures, and I think it got edited. Bygone. Ah, yes. There Dido class cruisers cost 1.48 million each. Tribal class vessel procured on an average price of 513,000. So you can roughly buy almost free for the cost of one Dido. So let's say the dual purpose guns, yeah, you could probably buy free for the cost of a single individual Dido. So yes, you could. If the conversion, if you've got the actual capability to produce that many tribals, which you would theoretically have, and if you had a dual-purpose 4.7-inch gun, and you could get it on the treaty limitations, yes, buying 3 tribals with that much firepower versus one Dido for every one Dido, that would be quite sensible. Ah, yes, that's it. Now I've found it. Ah, goodness gracious me. I'm now in the classic scenario of I wrote something and I wrote it and I was happy writing it, and now I can't. I'm trying to remember where exactly I wrote it. It's a classic Alex thing. Well, it's a classic thing of anyone actually. You end up with writing stuff and you're going, hang on, where did I actually write that? I read it. Now I'm just checking it. Ah, found it. It's always good when you go back through your files and go, hang on, where did I write that? Okay. Ay, caramba. I know what's happened. Ay, caramba. Take care, Mark Imus. Enjoy Paulimus. Sorry about that. This is why reading through the book sometimes is not the best thing to do, because I notice things and I go, someone did some editing and they were very smart. And I didn't notice it when I was reading through because I didn't think they'd change things like that. I always hate it when people are smart. Add in note. This is being very, very rude, and I do apologise to everyone for it, but I have to do it while I remember it, because otherwise I will forget it. And this is a note I will go back and go, would you not struggle though with that many trials? I don't know. If you consider how many Didos are built, 3-to-1, it is going to be interesting, but you can probably do it. It's going to affect. It probably will also have an impact on whether or not you're building J-class and other destroyers as well, which might end up you be putting actual efforts into other things as well. So it's going to have a lot of trade-offs. Level 98 Bear Hunting Gunner. Was there any particular reason why the guns in Italian cruisers and turrets were so close together? Basically, it's to save weight by having a single mechanism for both guns. Dan Maxey, what makes a good light cruiser hull? Well balanced, fast, and with the right levels of maneuverability. Actually, would the Town Class 1956 be better with 8-inch guns or not? Or not? They're perfectly fine as they are. This is the point. The Town Class of 1956 are designed to be 6-inch gun ships because the Royal Navy has calculated, very carefully gone through the ranges of likely engagement, and worked out that likely engagement ranges, especially pre-radar, means that you're going to be engaging at sufficiently close range that you can hit your target with either a 6-inch or an 8-inch gun. But the sheer volume of shells you can have raining down on a target with 12 6-inch versus 8 8-inch guns is going to give the advantage to the 6-inch gunship. I guess it was crewed out many tribals, and you could do that. The average Dido requires a crew of approximately 487 to 530, depending on whether it's Dido class or a Bell owner. And a tribal class... Well, tribal class come in at 190, 219 in flotilla leaders. So if you think about it, you broadly speaking, with the Didos, have twice as many crew as a tribal. In fact, more than twice as many crews. Broadly speaking, for every five, that one. So for every 3 Didos, I could crew 5 tribals. Hang on, there was that. 2, and one more on top. No, 7 tribals. So for every 3 Didos, I could probably crew 7 tribals. Maybe, because 487 times 3... Well, hang on now. 487 times 3 is 1,200... 160... 240, so 1,440... and 1,461, and yeah, so yeah, 7. I could crew 7 tribals for 3 Didos. And the 6-inch gun cruisers were, well, not 6-inch. No, they weren't really cheaper. There is an often idea that 6-inch gun cruisers are cheaper, but when you're buying 12 6-inch guns and you're sticking, remember, the expensive part of this ship is the engines. Okay. It's one of the things that I often get into is people that think that battleships are going to be more expensive than battle cruisers. And no, believe it or not, taking off armor and adding lightness and power, i.e. adding speed, is more expensive. Speed is always more expensive. Don't worry, Tanith. Hope you had a good time with your sister. Oh, Gotland was quite an interesting ship. In general. She's, how do I put this politely? She is one of those sort of seaplane carriers, sort of cruiser things. I did actually cover a bit in a video. I think I did a video on Gotland. Let me check. I have done I did the Krona class, and I think I did cover Gotland when I did the Krona class. The 3 Crown class. Yeah, it's sort of, the thing is, the Dido crews mostly, it's going to sound strange, the engineering is, it's mostly the gunners and the turret crews which take out the most extra crew on the Didos. Did anyone have to kit bash? I used parts from one warship on a ship they weren't designed for out of necessity. Yeah, there's a long case of ships being added, having bits added on. There's an entire tribal class destroyer in World War One which is called Zubian because it's HMS Zulu, the front of, plus the back aft section of HMS Nubian combined together, I think. Cameron, my understanding is that one of the considerations 6-inch versus 8-inch is the crewman could lift the 6-inch shell, but not 8-inch. This made it faster loading and allowed you to be faster firing. So yes, it is a consideration in 6 versus 8-inch. Don't know. What capability would you lose by ditching the Didos to Tribals, or what could the Tribals fill it? For most of the Didos, the Tribals could fill it. For anything they couldn't fill, you could have built more actual cruisers. So that's the other thing. Because you think about what spaces do you free up in construction if you're building Tribals and you're not building an AA cruiser like the Dido. What do you build instead of the Didos in those same shipyards? Do you build more Crown Colonies? Do you build more Refusers? Do you build... What do you build? So anyway, do you think adding the side keels to Age of Sail ships would be a help stability? I'd have to do a lot of work to work it out. It'd depend on hull type and a lot of hull framing. And exactly how you add them in and what form they take and how you can build them in. I think there's also the fact that the 6-inch shell could be built. Yeah, there are certain advantages and disadvantages to 6 and 8-inch shells. But that's quite a long way down the rabbit hole. I've realised Belfast has 4 Parsons geared turbines. Given how highly praised the Parsons have been over last year, yeah, those probably aren't going cheap. No, Parsons turbines are not cheap things. Don't know, how long ago did the Bish become a thing? Were the towns the end or something? The Royal Navy has been calling its resident member of the clergy the Bish for a very, very long time. Basically, it's a joke on the fact that the Royal Navy, once you're at sea, there is no one above you other than God, right? Well, as far as the captain, because the captain is the master under God at sea. Well, if you consider the clergy, they're technically a direct line to God, but they don't have a bishop at sea, so they get nicknamed the Bish, because they are de facto their own bishop. They're their own hierarchy. And they've been around a long time in the Royal Navy. A long, long time. So it's not just a case of nailing a few boards to the side of the ship and adding stability plus. Nope. I try to avoid rabbit holes as a rule when I'm on a live. When I'm on a recorded video, I can go down it and then come back up and go, yeah, that was problematic. And have been known to do that. On a semi-regular basis sometimes. I know rabbit holes are fun, but I prefer to avoid rabbit holes as a rule, as said. Right then. I know exactly how many more slides I've got to go in this, and I also know what the time is, and I know what I've got to do tomorrow. So, yeah. Excuse me a second. Now, there are of course some interesting never-built ships on the gun cruiser side. And you have to think about it. If some of these ships had actually been built, i.e. 15,000-ton vessels, how long would they have lasted post-World War II? Let's say you had completed, after World War II, some 15,000-ton cruisers with 9 8-inch guns. Let's say the Royal Navy had completed them. Vanguard probably wouldn't have lasted that long, but also other cruisers wouldn't have lasted that long. But again, imagine adapting something this size to a helicopter cruiser. You probably wouldn't get the ugly box. You could probably work out something slightly better. And it would be a very good utility. So it would have been around for quite a while. Might have even been around the Falklands War. Always a fun thing to think about. An anecdote is a Royal Navy captain made one of his crew a legal bishop to be able to consecrate ground to bury a sailor in the Victorian era. I think it was Dreadnought. There are several anecdotes around that about another reason why Royal Navy clergy are called bish. Ian Swanson, would it have been better to build more towns than around the Crown Colonies? Consider the Crown Colonies a stripped-down war emergency version of the town class. This was a British design. I2, World War warships. Almar would have been probably converted into a missile cruiser, or maybe even kept a forward-firing triple turrets. I think probably would have kept the forward-firing turrets. The aft one would have been converted to some sort of long-range missile system. I think some of the guns would have been converted to 3-inch guns. And I think some of them would have been converted to shorter-range missile systems. Theoretically, a frigate captain could apply to have a member of the clergy aboard his ship. But, as a rule, usually it was frigate squadron commanders, and some of the ships of the line. Again, usually more likely if you're a bigger one or an independent one. Well, how do I put this this sort of thing? This is definitely it could be US or UK in terms of its timeline, but it's a British one, and you can tell by the shaping and where the guns are. If it was a US one, there would be more 5-inch guns around. So that's how you can usually tell. Did the USN have an analog to the town class? Mm-hmm. They did. If you look them up, you'll find that they call theirs the Brooklyn class. Also appropriately named for, well, cities. But that's roughly what you would be considering as the US version of what the Royal Navy's building for the town class. But they are built for some quite different concepts of their warfighting role, which does explain their differences. I wanted to get Newport News in here somewhere. Now, Newport News is a pretty interesting one because, all in all, it's a gun cruiser and a half. Last all-gun heavy cruiser in the USN, commissioned 1949. This is a ship which, frankly, is going to dominate wherever it ends up. Burst at 15,000 plus tons could have been 12 to 8-inch guns. Not really. You see, It depends what you're looking for. If you're building a ship which is going to have no armor, yes. But if you're building a ship which is going to be actually to an extent armored against 8-inch gunfire, then you sacrifice your 4th turret for that amount of protection around the rest of the ship. My coach, never built design. Early World War II British design study, a 22,000 ton, 12 times 9.2 inch Source Nelson and Vanguard, page 84. If built, what would a post-war refit or rebuild look like? That's an interesting one, because it depends what they do about the guns. Do they remove B and X mount? Do they remove X and Y mount for missiles? Do they just concentrate on the secondaries and don't remove the primaries? There are lots of different options they could go. Myself, my belief is that they would probably have removed X mount, left Y, A and B, and secondaries. But I can't be 100% sure because it's a hypothetical based on a never built. Michael, do you play any Naval War games on PC? Yeah, there are a reason there are some videos of Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts on this thing. Also, I do play World of Warships occasionally, but I don't put them on my channel because, as some of you know, I do appear on Armchair Admirals for World of Warships, and chatting away there, and my view is that I like them, they're very nice people, I have a lot of fun with them, and I enjoy their games. But if I start putting their videos out for free as well as appearing on their things for free because I do it because I enjoy the chatting with people about history, then at a certain point I'm giving them a lot of free advertising. And I'm just mercenary enough to go, no, I'll divide my love. I'll divide my praise. Actually, I saw that one. Probably would have been a Panzer Chief Hunter if the Germans had went ahead with Plan Z. It would have been something. It would have been something. Honestly, it would have probably made most Panzer Chief quite scared to even hear that thing was anywhere nearby. 12 9.2 inch guns is not going to be fun to deal with. So anyway, with the new shared ship mechanic for UAD, you can review our ships next update. I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to look forward to that one. I'm going to also start sharing my own ships, of course, as well at some point. Blue Earth, Newport News equals a Des Moines class with 17,000 tons and autoloading 18-inch guns. To an extent, I would agree, to an extent, but I think she's just pretty. Then we had the last gun cruiser, which was BAP Almirante Grau. Armchair Animals has still been going on Twitch. It's not been streaming on YouTube, I think, for some reason. But it still does it on Twitch. And I enjoy it. Mainly because I enjoy any chance to chat with my friends. And they are friends. They are really nice people. Oh. Seriously, you make a couple of comments about logistics in a video on destroyers, and suddenly everyone is making jokes based on the logistics. It's brilliant. Well, it's a cruiser video, but yeah, they're the Belknap class. Almirante Grau was launched at a Dutch de 7 Provinciën class. Yes, she was, and of course she's given guns which come from the Swedish design system. So those were the Swedish guns which lasted for a long, long time. Well, I won't ask, but I do enjoy the thought of Guadalcanal Canal cruiser confrontations with Des Moines involved the Allies. Depends. Are the Americans going to ever actually behave any more sensibly than they did at Tasfaranga? Because that's the trouble at Guadalcanal a few other times, is that sometimes it's the sporadicness of the American command. And this is the problem, is it's going to sound strange. You have some officers who are honestly so shocked they're in a war. Still at Guadalcanal. But Tasafronga is, of course, the classic example of that. Fun fact, USS Salem, Des Moines-class cruiser. Played Graf Spee in the movie. Captain would not allow a swastika to be hoisted on his ship. Nope, he wouldn't. Actually, her sister was given SM-1s. All the guns on them were Swedish, apart from the small arms like machine guns. Yep, they were good guns. They were very good guns. Yeah, there were so many issues with the Allies at Guadalcanal. And this, of course, finishes on USS Salem, which someone's already jumped in and said and mentioned about her being part of, for her standing in for Graf Spee, which actually I consider rather cruel, because she's actually a very efficient cruiser design, and if she'd been there, not Graf Spee, it would have actually been severe problems for the British at the Battle River Plate, but as it was. Off topic, but is there a new family bet subscriber target for next year? Don't get me started. So she decided 15,000, because I'm close enough to 10,000. She thinks I'll get there during the year, so it's got to be 15,000 to keep winning. I give up. Yes, because you always draw up importance of logistics and tell stories about how these get their supplies and upgrades, and it just clicks together perfectly. That should do Rochelle. Fun fact, the survivors from Bismarck all insisted they had painted over the swan sticker on her stern. Then we found the wreck with it still there intact. Paint must have washed off, Bichon says. Yeah. Put Admiral Lee in charge squadron of Des Moines and see what happens. Heesh. Jack Race, give up, it's not even your bet. No, I give up because I am in the middle of the bet, and frankly, I find it, yeah. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed. I hope you enjoyed the last year. This is the last live of 2022. And as I said, I wanted it to be sort of a catch-up session on the year and general discussion of the year. I hope you've enjoyed it all. And I hope you found it interesting and helpful. And, you know, there are lots of videos coming up still. Ticonderoga class is recorded, but currently it's not uploading for some reason. I have no idea. It's on the screen next to me. It's supposed to be being uploaded while it's been live, and it hasn't been uploading. So I'm going to have to go and have a conversation with that. Nuclear-powered cruisers is already up. Treaty cruisers in War Retrospect and gun cruisers are the only things which are not quite finished and uploaded. All the rest are uploaded. So they're all coming, and I hope you enjoyed them. Listen, Salem had been Graf Spee, the Iron would have needed a repulsor renown, not the standard heavy cruiser squadrons. If Salem had repeated the Graf Spee, the Royal Navy would have had packs of probably counties hunting for them, and renown or repulse sitting down there going, hello? With a carrier. But again, they'd have had to find a carrier in all the other ships from elsewhere, which means they wouldn't have been other places. Take care, Jack Ray. Thank you, Dunrick Arha. Thank you, Steve Clarke, Dick Richards. Thank you, Anook. Thank you, John Shea. Thank you, Mr. Henry's End. Thank you, Blue Evos. Thank you, H. Verdun. Thank you, Night 681. Just working out that hood estimate total when each year is adjusted for inflation. It gets interesting. Thanks, Michael Coach. I hope you enjoyed the back catalogue. I do realise in some of them I have hair which is down here because I went through a period of there is me pre-working out, pre-just going, frig it, I will cut my own bleeming hair, and post me cutting my hair. And unfortunately I went a bit too short on the first cut, and I mean I went really, really short. I joined us here, so it took me quite some time to get used. Thank you. Thank you, Strandregard. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, DG40. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tan Verka. Thank you, Donald Garnhammer. Thank you, Nook. Thank you, Blavatsky. Thank you, Ian Morrison. Happy New Year to everyone. I hope you all have a wonderful time. I hope you have a fun evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. If I have my way, I will spend the evening in a hot tub, but leaving that to one side, I will see you. I doubt it. I don't think I'm going to be anywhere with a hot tub on then, but you never know. The night of the 1st, there are so many different options for where I could be. It could be interesting. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care. You might get Hot Tub Historian for New Year's Day. Yay! Or you might get Very Cold on a Windy Beach Historian from New Year's Day. Or you might get in here from this office on New Year's Day. I don't know. It depends where I end up. Thank you, Captain C4. Thank you, Abzaski. Thank you, Gia Guy. Thank you, Colin Cameron. Thank you, Just Funk. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We enjoyed your post-90 videos, such as the ones on the site now. Extremely interesting. Thank you. I do have to be sort of sometimes a bit careful and circumspect with what I say, but I hope you enjoyed them. I have to admit I've been quite circumspect in the TCO class's position, but yeah, I think I've still done a good video. Thank you, Senator Canero. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Have a nice evening, and oh. I do not know. I'm just avoiding one of the conversations going on in the chat. Enjoy. Hey, caramba. Take care, have fun, and thank you for watching.